Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here. We have with us the permanent representative of India, Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, who, as you know, is the president of the Security Council for the month of December. Before we start, just a few pointers on how we intend to conduct this briefing. As per usual practice, Ambassador Kamboj will give a few opening remarks. After that, we will open up the floor to take a few questions from you. The only request I would have is, since time is limited, I would request that those who ask questions, please keep your question to one as far as practicable, so that as many journalists as possible get a chance to ask questions as well. With that, I give the floor to the Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhu, and good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here to brief you on our presidency of the Security Council for the month of December. At the outset, let me say that I'm honored to be in New York as India's permanent representative to the UN to preside over the Security Council, coming, as it does, in the last month of our tenure of the Security Council this 8th time. Over the last 2 years of our membership of the Council, I can say with confidence that we have been shouldering responsibilities well and making every effort to bridge the different voices within the Council so as to ensure that the Council itself speaks in one voice as far as possible on a variety of issues. We will bring the same spirit to our December presidency. You would have seen the program of work for the month that was adopted earlier today by the Security Council. There are several routine and mandated meetings scheduled for the month based on their respective reporting cycles, as well as some mandate renewals that have been scheduled as well. Given the holidays that come at the end of this month, the program is very packed. Nevertheless, we have tried to leave space for any contingencies. Since you have the program in front of you, I will not get into the details. I will, however, brief you on our signature events. Sorry? Oh, the program is... It's on email.
It is being distributed right now as we speak.
Thank you. So I was saying that we will now, I will focus on the signature events. The focus is on two major themes. One, an all-encompassing theme focused on building a new orientation towards reformed multilateralism. And a second theme will be a focus on the global counter-terrorism approach and the way forward. So let's first turn to reformed multilateralism. It is very clear that the UN of today is far from reflective of the true diversity of the UN's wider membership. 22 years after world leaders called for comprehensive UN Security Council reforms, we have not moved an inch, and there is even lack of a negotiating text. Similarly, the global development architecture outside the United Nations is equally distorted and would require intense efforts to enhance the coherence and consistency of the international monetary, financial, and trading systems. There is a ray of hope, if I may put it that way. During high-level week in the course of UNGA 77, 76 countries favored UNSC reforms and 73 spoke for UN reforms. This is not a serendipitous coincidence, but a reflection of the thinking of the wider membership. Clearly, the multidimensional crises facing the world today demand a representative multilateral architecture that is reflective of contemporary global realities and is well equipped to meet emerging challenges. The UN must be fit for purpose. Given this background, the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, will chair an open debate of the Security Council on 14th December, which we hope will encourage member states to exchange ideas on key issues, specifically how to inject new life into multilateralism in order to ensure that the tools we have today are adequate to address the challenges of the future. As well, what should be the key elements of this new orientation for a reformed multilateral system? No doubt, food for thought for all UN watchers. Then on 15th December, the External Affairs Minister will chair a briefing of the Security Council on a global counter-terrorism approach, specifically an exchange of views on the principles and the way forward. The threat of terrorism is grave and universal, and it is also transnational in nature. You will also agree with me that there has been a resurgence of terrorism in recent times. There is also an increased risk of terrorists exploiting the proliferation of digitalization, new and emerging modes of communication, and financing technologies. The existing and emerging threats call for a renewed collective approach to terrorism. This high-level briefing of the Security Council will provide an opportunity for the Council to take stock and build on the recent deliberations of the special meeting of the UN Counter-Terrorism Committee held in India in October. As you know, India holds the chairship of this committee. It would also aim to arrive at a way forward for the global community's collective fight against terrorism. Now let me take this opportunity to also brief you very, very quickly on the special meeting of the CTC held recently in Mumbai and Delhi. This was the first time that the CTC met outside New York in 7 years, and also the very first time that the Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee met in India. Adoption of the Pioneer Delhi Declaration manifested the resolve of the Council to deal with the new and emerging threats in a comprehensive manner through a set of recommendations for member states in the short term and the development of a normative framework in the form of guiding principles in a longer term. And this will guide member states in addressing the threat going forward. The presence of the victims from the Mumbai terror attacks of 26 November 2008 brought a poignant touch to the events, symbolizing the reposing of faith by the victims in the international community and a reflection that the Council, as a custodian of world peace and security, does pay attention to the pain of victims and would work collectively to ensure that not only would the victims get justice, but also that the world becomes a better place to exist by getting rid of the scourge of terrorism. Now, there will also be two side events coinciding with India's presidency. The first would mark the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi at the United Nations on 14 December at a simple ceremony. The Secretary General and the External Affairs Minister of India will inaugurate a bust of Gandhiji, which is to be placed in the prestigious North Lawns of the UN building. Needless to add, the event will take place in the presence of Council members, including the 5 incoming members of the Security Council, or the I-5. The second side event will see the launch of a group of Friends for Accountability of Crimes Against UN Peacekeepers. As many of you would know, a more robust peacekeeping has been one of our priorities in the Security Council, and in following up to Resolution 2589, which had focused on the safety and security of peacekeepers, the group of friends will keep the spotlight on an issue that is fundamental and, if I may say, existential to the task of peacekeepers. I would also like to mention that starting today, India has taken over another presidency, that of the G20. It is indeed an honor for us to lead a group that represents 85% of the world's GDP and 75% of global trade. As noted by our Prime Minister, our presidency of the G20 comes at a time of crisis and chaos in the world. The world is going through the after effects of a disruptive, once-in-a-century pandemic, conflicts, and much economic uncertainty. At such a time, the world looks to G20 with much hope. India's presidency would be a watershed moment in her history as it seeks to play an important role in finding pragmatic global solutions for the well-being of all, and in doing so, to manifest the true spirit of the world being one large family, which is very much a part of Indian ethos. As the G20 president, India will thus set the agenda for the year, identify the themes and focus areas, conduct discussions, and deliver the outcome documents. As the Indian Prime Minister has stated, the presidency will be ambitious, decisive, and all-inclusive, underpinned by the thinking, one earth, one family, one future. We see both these presidencies, that of the Security Council for this month and the G20 for the next 1 year, as a new responsibility for ourselves. We will try our utmost to ensure that the hopes and expectations of the global community are met. One final word, we will also be promoting millets. 2023, as you know, is the International Year of Millets, and this was a resolution that was adopted unanimously by the General Assembly. Millets are very healthy, environment friendly, and in the course of the next few weeks and months, I would urge you, and we would certainly welcome you to some of our events where we will be promoting millets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Before I give the floor, I would request you to state your name and organization before you ask the questions. With this, I give the floor to Valeria.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ambassador, for this press conference on behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association. We wish you all the best of luck for the months ahead. My question is on Ukraine. So how many chances do you think there are that the back channel launch between Washington and Moscow could lead to a pause of the conflict and for the end of the Great Ukrainian Cold? And which steps are you planning to take in the Security Council to help towards a peace in the country? Thank you so much.
Well, Ukraine is very much a focus matter in the Security Council, and there would be meetings on Ukraine, so don't be surprised on that. As far as the question on what chances is concerned, I think that is a hypothetical question. We'll just have to wait and see.
I will pass the floor to Yoshida.
Thank you, Ambassador, and good luck for the presidency. You've mentioned India taking over the G20 presidency also along with the UN Security Council presidency. Now, in these divisive times, both within the Council and globally, how does India hope to utilize both of these presidencies to sort of work together towards finding solutions for the geopolitical challenges that you've mentioned? Thank you.
Thank you, Yoshita, for the question. India has assumed the presidency of the G20 today, and we have assumed the presidency of the Council today. As far as the G20 goes, the summit will be in New Delhi on 9 and 10 September, and the pre-meetings will be more than 100 across the length and breadth of our country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. What will we do through the G20 presidency? Our Prime Minister has already mentioned very clearly that it will be ambitious, it will be decisive, it will be all-inclusive. The effort will be to keep the unity, because India truly believes that the world is one large family, and to this end, we bring people-centric solutions to the table. And we will continue to do that during the course of the presidency. There will also be an outcome document, and there have been many successes in India in recent years. And we hope to bring some of these successes, scale these up, and bring them to the world, share our experiences, again underpinned by the philosophy that the world is one family, and what the Indian Prime Minister has said, one earth, one family, one future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. You have the visibility of both G20 and the Security Council presidency, as you just mentioned. There have been calls, including France most recently 2 weeks ago, to support India as a permanent member of the Security Council. How does this visibility, or how does this month here at least, help you move that forward? And is it moving forward at all in terms of general UN Security Council reform? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That was a very interesting question. What I will say is, and I will draw your attention to the last 2 years in particular, because human memory is always short. So let's begin with the immediate past. In the last 2 years, you would have noticed, as the world has gone through these various crises, India has always been there as a solution provider. Let's look at COVID. We supplied medicines, medical equipment, medical teams to countries in need. We were there in response to humanitarian crises. We supplied 240 million doses of vaccines to over 100 countries. So all of this and more points to the fact that India is ready to take its place at the global top table as a country that is willing to bring solutions to the table and to contribute positively to the global agenda. And I will rest my case there. I can give you many instances. For instance, in the last 4 months alone, we have supplied 1.4 million tons of humanitarian assistance to countries in need, be these be Afghanistan, Myanmar, Sudan, Yemen, closer home Sri Lanka, and even Ukraine. So we walk the talk, and as we have repeatedly emphasized, one of the central tenets of our foreign policy is human-centric, people-centric, and that will continue to be the case.
If I may, you've made the case for merits. Is it moving? Is Security Council reform in any way moving forward? Thank you.
I wish I could say yes, yes, and yes, but I will definitely say that this is one of the most complex processes in the UN system, but there is a ray of hope. As I said during High Level Week, many countries, the wider membership did express a preference for UN reform, Security Council reform, and we will work very constructively in the course of UNGA 77 to hopefully move the process forward, working off a text and in full collaboration and cooperation with all UN member states.
Thank you.
Toshin Aba from Kyoto News of Japan. Thank you, Ambassador. I understand you have a difficult task of presidency ahead of you, but I don't think we have this opportunity at the end of this month when your membership will end at the council. So could you wrap up your presence, your membership at the council? You had a Ukraine war that made it difficult for the council to function efficiently. How has it benefited India and other parts of the world for India to be a member of the council? Thank you.
Well, you know, I can go on and on answering this question because it gives me an opportunity to speak to everything that India has brought to the global top table. But very quickly, let me say that we have been very conscious of the fact that the conflict has had a very severe impact on the global south. There has, in fact, been collateral damage there, and we have stated this unhesitatingly so in all our statements. And for that, we have been ready to help our friends and partners in need. I have just given some statistics and figures. Those speak for themselves. And importantly, and going forward, we will continue to do that. And as far as, the pandemic or other situations in the course of our presidency, there will always be challenges. We look upon all of these challenges as opportunities. And I'm happy to say that we have walked the talk and put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you, Ambassador. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. India, as well as other countries, has been a long time for this reform, waiting for this reform. I will calculate at least a quarter of a century, 25 years. So what is exactly different? What's happening differently that will, you think, that will make some optimism that some reform will come? Because always on the end, there is a lot of talk and no reform. And I just also want to add one thing. You had a lot of opposition from countries that have another idea, that they think that adding permanent members is not going to democratize, give more democracy at the UN. So what you respond to those countries that are in opposition to more permanent members? What is the opinion of India about the veto, the veto power? And finally, India, the candidacy of India was very strong, and it's usually very strong because it's the biggest, largest democracy in the world. But lately, in the last years, unfortunately, for press freedom has been ranked number 150, for example, from Reporters Without Borders. So what is how you respond to this criticism that democracy in India, at least as far as to do with the freedom of the press, has not been improving?
Yeah, so your question carries several sub-questions. So let me answer to all of them. I'll try to do that. First of all, Security Council reform. I think you'll all agree with me that the case for Security Council is undeniable. Undeniable. The Council, as it is currently configured, is an anachronism. Now, the second part of that. We do know that everyone does not agree very easily on all issues. So if there is some pushback by some countries, as you're saying, that is normal. That is normal in the United Nations system. That is normal in any negotiation process. But I'm happy to tell you that the broad majority of the membership does feel very strongly that enough is enough and reforms are needed. We hope that we will be able to take the process constructively forward. I know there is some degree of fatigue, but to my mind, it is very clear this issue has never been more relevant than it is today, and I'm very hopeful that we will be able to take the process forward, of course, always in collaboration with member states. Now, the second aspect you raised was about democracy, freedom of press. To that, I would like to say that, you know, we don't need to be told what to do on democracy. India is perhaps the most ancient civilization in the world, as all of you know. In India, democracy had roots going back to 2,500 years. 2,500 years. We were always a democracy. The Shakyas and the Lichavis, to those of my Indian friends who are here. And coming down to very recent times, we have all the pillars of democracy that are intact. Legislature, executive, judiciary, and the fourth estate, the press, and a very vibrant social media. So the country is the world's largest democracy, as you know. Every 5 years, we conduct the world's largest democratic exercise. Everyone is free to say as they wish and please. And that is how our country functions. It's rapidly reforming, transforming, and changing. And the trajectory has been very impressive. And I don't have to say this. You don't have to listen to me. Others are saying this. The veto power, well, we are very realistic about the veto power as we talk about reform of the Security Council. Ideally, the veto should not be there for any member, but if that is not possible, then it should be there for all members.
Thank you. My name is Jordan Dakamsi from Jordan News. I see that you will have a briefing on 19th on the Israeli settlement in Palestine. The briefing also will include, of course, the Security Council Resolution 2334, and since its adoption 6 years ago, more settlements been erected in Palestine. Do you think, Madam Ambassador, that as long as this issue under Chapter 6 will stay as is without moving forward? And what is your vision as permanent representative of India and also as President of the Security Council on solving this issue, taking into consideration that there is no sanctions in place to punish whoever does not implement Security Council resolutions? Yet there are many countries in the Middle East, like in Syria and Iraq and South Sudan and Congo, all resolutions are under Chapter 7. But when we come to Palestine, it's under Chapter 6. Thank you so much.
Well, let me answer your question this way, that we firmly believe that a direct negotiation or direct negotiations between Israel and Palestine on all final status issues, I can see you are not agreeing with me, is the best way to achieve a two-state solution. And India has always supported the efforts of the international community towards this end, and we stand ready in future as well to continue our support to all such efforts towards restarting the direct negotiations and the Middle East peace process.
Sorry, I have to...
Yesterday, we made a statement in the General Assembly also on the question of Palestine, and you would have perhaps followed what we said. We stand by that.
Yeah, Madam Ambassador, if you think negotiation can reach a solution, that I assure you after 100 years we will ask the same question as Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I'm curious, and I'm sure we're all curious, are you the first female ambassador to the UN from India? But That's not my question.
I thought it was a very easy question, and I was already nodding. Yes, the answer to that is yes.
My questions are a couple of follow-ups. First, on the 19th, it says there's a briefing in the afternoon on non-proliferation. What part of non-proliferation is that? And in your signature event on UN reform, we've talked about certainly Security Council reform. What other reforms are you interested in having highlighted? And you mentioned that Ukraine was going to be discussed during December. In my quick look, I don't see it on the schedule.
Yeah.
And also, I don't see Haiti on the schedule, which has still been basically in a state of anarchy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all those questions. As far as Ukraine and Haiti are concerned, they may not be on the schedule, but rest assured the Security Council is very seized of both these matters, and don't be too surprised when they find their way into the schedule. So the Council is actively following developments on both issues. As far as Security Council reform is concerned, the position of my country is early reform with comprehensive reform at its core. Comprehensive reform is not just an expansion in the permanent membership of the Security Council, but also in the non-permanent category, the question of the veto, the relationship between the General Assembly and the Security Council, and an improvement in the working methods of the Security Council to make these more democratic and thereby more effective. There was one more question on non-proliferation. So that relates to the Iran JCPOA matter. Yeah. My colleagues have very helpfully just reminded me about that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Thank you for the briefing. I just wanted to follow up with you on some comments made by the Russian Foreign Minister this morning. He accused NATO of trying to drag India into what he called an anti-Russian and an anti-Chinese alliance. Does India feel like NATO has tried to drag them into such an alliance? And how would you sort of describe your relations, India's relations with Russia and the West during this time of the war in Ukraine?
No, thank you very much. I'm glad you asked that question. I'll put it this way. India is too big a country. It stands tall and proud on its own. And let me amplify a little bit on that. In the course of the conflict in Ukraine, we have been very clear and consistent right from the outset. We have spoken in one voice that we are for peace. Peace is also a side. And we favor diplomacy and dialogue. And to this end, our Prime Minister is speaking to both sides. Our Foreign Minister is speaking to both sides. We are among the few countries, dare I say, which is speaking to both sides. Our Prime Minister's comment that this is not an era of war has received global acceptance and incidentally even found its way into the G20 declaration that was recently adopted in Bali. So that would be my answer to your question. And at the same time, as far as the conflict in Ukraine is concerned, we've been very mindful of the humanitarian situation. I'm sure all of you know that we have shipped 12 medical consignments to Ukraine. We have given financial assistance to build educational institutions. At the same time, we do have a relationship with Russia, an important relationship with Russia. And as far as the relationship with the United States is concerned, it's a comprehensive strategic partnership, which has never been closer, tighter, or stronger than it is today.
So India doesn't feel like NATO has tried to drag it into an anti-Russian or anti-Chinese alliance?
I think I've just answered your question. We are a country that stands tall and proud and stands tall and proud on its own.
And just on a lighter note, your presidency also coincides with the Football World Cup in Qatar.
Yes.
We have to ask, because we've asked previous presidents during previous World Cups, will this affect the work of the Security Council in any way?
No, I don't think we'll be given a respite.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. My name is Susan Tehrani, UN correspondent for WION. Best of luck to you for the presidency of the Security Council in December. It's also a very important day for India at the G20. The United States, the Pentagon, notably 2 days back, expressed concern regarding China over its nuke alarming drive. And also, the international community has expressed concern about the way China has been dealing with protests and demonstrations regarding its COVID policy, considering the fact that China is a member of the UN Security Council, and you may have an opportunity in perhaps responding to these issues. Do you have any comments to make regarding those two issues, the nuclear issue and then also the peaceful protests in China? Thank you.
I would say that India, we don't comment on the internal and domestic matters of other countries. It is not for us to comment on that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Evelyn Leopold. I've been watching the reform of the Security Council for longer than I will admit here. The G4 by itself have not, each one of them has strong opposition from somewhere in the world or somewhere their neighbors. Around the millennium, the G4 tried to organize or did organize a resolution that gave the schematic of what a new council would look like without mentioning the names of who would occupy what. Japan then backed out of it because the United States at the time told it to drop it. But it had circulated. It might, excuse me, might not be relevant today. But I'm wondering if you're thinking of that rather than try the whole thing at once, you know, of putting the names in, but having a schematic without the names and in the General Assembly, because the Security Council cannot agree on anything.
Well, you know, you've heard that thing about not putting the cart before the horse. So we are restarting the process. I'm told that the IGN starts sometime in January, and we will work within the ambit of the existing negotiation, and we will take it from there. We will see how it works out, and we will calibrate our position accordingly.
Ambassador, this is Dr. Xu with China Central Television. So nice to see you again and wish you a successful presidency. When you're answering questions to Valeria and to Michelle, you mentioned that there would be meetings on Ukraine, and India both called for peace and dialogue to both sides. And we know that India has a very special position and the relationship both with Western countries as well as Russian Federation. So as a president of this month, what would be your approach to engage with all parties in dealing with the issue of Ukraine, given the fact, you know, the two sides, they're obviously quite, you know, oppositing to each other?
Well, we will continue to engage with all parties. I think that is one of our strengths, and it has been recognized as one of our strengths that we are a voice of moderation, a voice of reason, and a bridge builder, and we will walk the talk in the December presidency also. And I just will segue a little bit and draw your attention to what our Prime Minister has said in the context of India's G20 presidency, that India will work towards unity. And when we say that the world is one, we mean that humankind is one, and we are there to help each other. It is in that spirit that India has been extending humanitarian assistance, been very effective as a first responder. So we will continue to do that in the Council as well, to be a bridge builder and to be a voice of moderation and reason. So that is the India way.
So you're confident that India would at least change the direction to a right way, right?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You just hope that.
But
You just hope for
yes,
that.
certainly we will continue to work with a lot of positivity.
Take one last question.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. Thank you for the press briefing and congratulations on your presidency. I have a quick follow-up on Ukraine first. Do you believe that there is enough done to try to have negotiation there or bring the Ukrainians and Russians to the table What's your position? And my question is on Syria and the cross-border mechanism. I know that the vote will be in January, but the question is whether you have already negotiation on that resolution. What are you hearing? If you could shed more lights on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so in response to the question that you've raised on Ukraine, what I would like to say is that definitely there is an attempt, and everything is not played out in the public domain, as you can understand. Parties are talking, people are talking. Everybody wants to de-escalate the situation, and we very much hope that sooner or later this effort to de-escalate will succeed. As I've already mentioned, our country has been talking to both sides, is talking to both sides, and we very much hope, we have stated publicly that we hope that the situation will de-escalate soon. As to the question on Syria, the resolution, to the best of my knowledge, I think it extends till January, 10th January. But of course, discussions are ongoing, talks are ongoing. Council is continuing to engage on Syria, I can assure you, and there would be some development very soon on this front.
One last.
Okay, right, okay.
Please.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you. I'm Dawn Clancy with Pass Blue, and it's kind of a follow-up to the questions that have been asked about Ukraine and India's position. I just wanted to get your response to something that Ukraine President Zelensky said during the high-level week. He was addressing specifically member states that take a neutral stance. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, those who speak of neutrality when human values and peace are under attack only pretend to be interested in each other's problems. They take care of each other formally. They sympathize only for protocol. They pretend, but in reality, they protect only their vested interests. This is what creates the conditions for war. I just have been curious to what your response to that would be. Thank you.
Well, it is not for me, no, thank you for the question, but it's not for me to comment on that statement. However, I will take this opportunity to once again reiterate our country's position. Our country has not been passive. Our country has stated very clearly that we have a position, that is, we have taken the side of peace, and we favor diplomacy and dialogue, and we favor de-escalation and an early end to the conflict. At the same time, we have condemned the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure in the course of conflict, no matter who commits this. And thirdly, we have stated very clearly that this conflict has had immense impact and immense suffering on countries of the global south, and there we have not been idle either. We have extended a helping hand despite constraints in our own country. And I have already given you those instances. We have done so in Ukraine. We have done so in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Sudan, Yemen, Sri Lanka. And we are ready to do more. So, by any standard, this is not the stand of a country that is passive. This is the stand of a country that is creative, caring, contributory, that is willing to bring solutions to the global top table and to do more.
Thanks, thanks everyone. Unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, we will have to stop now.
Really quick. Very, very quick. It's a follow-on question from the North Korea meeting on the ICBM launch. I believe that there was a presidential statement under discussion. Is that still being negotiated, or is it done?
Well, there were 2 meetings on North Korea last month, if I'm not wrong. And it is a fact that we have not had a presidential statement yet. There are sometimes divergent views. We have to take on board all views. So that is, I suppose you could say, yet a work that has not happened.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
so
coming.
much. Really appreciate it.
Look
Thank
forward
you.
to your cooperation.
Thank you.